Hi, welcome to Mormon Tabernacle Choir premieres on the Mormon Channel, brought to you by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm Heidi Swinton, and I'm here today with the music director of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, Mack Wilberg, and the associate director, Ryan Murphy. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a bit of an unusual program for you today. While we usually do new music or a CD coming out, today we're going to talk about the Atlantic Coast tour that the choir is taking the end of June and the first week of July. And I'm just going to start out by having Mack talk to us about the different venues that you're going to. Some of them are new to the choir, some of them are places we've been before. So kind of walk us through what this Atlantic Coast tour is going to be all about.
Well, first of all, Heidi, it's always a great pleasure to be with you, and thank you for inviting us today to talk about our upcoming tour. And as you said, we are doing a tour to along the Atlantic coast, and there are several venues where we performed in the past, and then several new venues, and so it's going to be a great tour and an exciting tour for everyone. We begin our tour flying into the Washington, D.C. area to do a concert at the Strathmore Concert Hall in Bethesda, Maryland. I am told that this is a relatively new concert hall, a beautiful hall, and this will be the first time that the choir has performed there. And in fact, on previous tours that I have participated in, we have always performed at Wolf Trap, which is, of course, a wonderful, very well-known outdoor venue in that area. But to be able to now perform in an indoor concert hall will be a new experience for us. And we're actually doing two concerts there, a matinee performance and an evening performance. And then from there, we're doing something that we've never done before, and that is we will bus ourselves to New York City, and then we're going to stay in New York City for an extended amount of time and use New York City as our springboard to other venues. And so after arriving in New York City, we will get on buses and take ourselves to Bethel Woods, which is in New York State, for an outdoor venue. And I'm again told that this is a beautiful place, a beautiful outdoor concert venue, and so we're certainly looking forward to that. We come back to New York City, and 2 days later, then we go to Saratoga Springs, New York, to do another outdoor concert. I was with the choir when we performed at Saratoga Springs in 2003, and I remember it being a beautiful venue, and I understand that they've actually done some renovations since we've been there, and so certainly looking forward to that. And then we return back to New York City again, and we're very excited to be able to present two concerts in, of course, what many would say is the greatest concert hall in our country and one of the greatest in the world, which is Carnegie Hall. And so we will be performing two concerts in Carnegie Hall, July 1st, July 2nd. And then the next day, we're quite excited to do something that the choir's never done before, or had the opportunity to do before, and that is to sing right before a Yankee baseball game at Yankee Stadium. We'll be presenting a little bit of music and then sing the national anthem, all on the field of Yankee Stadium. And so that's going to be a great and new experience for us. And then following that, we will actually then get on buses and travel to Boston, where we will conclude our concert, performing in the Wang Theater in Boston.
Ryan, you know something about the Wang Theater in Boston. Give us a understanding of it.
I do. It's a beautiful old theater. It's been gorgeously renovated, and it's going to be an exciting space for us to perform in. Just a real treat right downtown. So it's going to be great.
You know, I couldn't help but think when you were describing those locations and you mentioned going to Bethel Woods in New York, some of our listeners might remember that as the site of Woodstock.
Yes, yes.
So for the Mormon Tabernacle Choir to be singing at Woodstock,
Right.
and then at Carnegie Hall, and then at Yankee Stadium is putting a whole new face.
It's quite a spectrum of
Quite
places.
a spectrum, and then concluding in the Wang Theater in Boston. So we're seeing a real contrast there. Talk to me about the program. You mentioned indoor programs with beautiful concert halls, some of them old, some of them new. Outdoor facilities that are also concert facilities and used for that. What do you do with the program when you have an indoor and an outdoor concert setting?
Programming for this concert has been a little bit more of a challenge because our concert venues are much more diversified than what they've been in the past. And so we are having to do two different programs, one for the outdoor venues and then another program for the indoor venue. And the reason for this is that some of the music, for instance, that we will perform in a place such as Carnegie Hall may not transfer so well in an outdoor venue just because of the acoustics of
And the size.
and the size as well. And so we are having to prepare and memorize, I might also add, two different programs in order to make sure that we give our best presentation, whether it's indoor or outdoor.
What's it like for the choir to have to memorize all that music?
It is a challenge, and it's particularly a challenge for those who may be newer in the choir, because in the choir's repertoire, we probably have anywhere from 200 to 300 pieces that we would call our core repertoire, and out of those, we can probably sing about half of them by memory. Well, when a person joins the choir, it becomes a bit of a challenge for them to have to catch up to all the others who already know all the repertoire. So the biggest challenge are for those of our choir members who are fairly new, and I would say who have come in the choir within the last 2 years.
Yeah.
For the rest of the choir, we, because we want to be as well prepared as possible and present ourselves as well as possible, we do sing everything by memory. And there is a lot of our repertoire that will carry over, and some of the repertoire for both the outdoor and the indoor venues will overlap. So it's not like they're completely two different programs, but in many respects they are.
But very different in terms of some of the music. Some of it is classical, some of it is folk music. I mean, you've got a lot of...
We have, as always, with everything that we do, a broad spectrum of music. And that's what the choir has been known for really since its very beginning. And so we try to keep that a part of...
And I would say both of those programs are true to that in different ways.
Yes.
They still accomplish the same thing.
They do.
They show the broad repertoire that the choir can perform, and there's anything from classical to very crowd-pleasing literature, and so both of them will be, I think, loved by the audience in both venues.
Give us a couple of examples of what you think will be really well received by the audience. A classical number, perhaps, that you're very confident about and will showcase the choir. And
I think everything that we're doing, we're very careful when we program for the tour, that I always say that every second has to count. There can't be a moment of a little lull, if you will. And so we're hoping that we accomplish on this tour, as we have in the previous tours, I would say that we have done a pretty good job of keeping the audience well engaged from beginning to end. And the reason why you can know that is sometimes you know by the noise that you're hearing in the audience. And then because both of us conduct during the concert itself, you have opportunities to leave the stage and just observe the audience for a while. And I think hopefully that we will, because of what we programmed and the wide spectrum of what we programmed, and also hopefully we'll perform it well enough that that I think everything that we do will keep our listener engaged.
I've been on tour with you once, and I remember standing back at the back and watching the energy that went from the choir to the audience, and the audience was so appreciative, and these were sophisticated music listeners, and they loved it. So I'm sure that's what will happen. How do you prepare the choir? What kind of discipline do you have to put in place, and how do you do the rehearsal schedule to get ready for tour?
Well, having a wonderful choir is just like having a great athletic team. You have to have high discipline. And this is something that we're constantly telling the choir, that there has to be more discipline in what we're doing. It's just not a matter of sitting down on your seat and singing, that there has to be discipline in so many areas, whether it be intonation or rhythm or, and in our case, ensemble, keeping 300 plus voices singing so that they sing together as if they are one voice. And so discipline is a huge issue for us, and something that we have to, from time to time, remind the choir about, that there has to be a higher discipline.
Well, and they're all volunteers.
They're all volunteers, and you know, and they do a magnificent job.
Well, and it is interesting how many people line up to apply for the auditions when you do them once a year. This is something that is in everybody's heart that's ready to sing.
Well, we're very fortunate and blessed to have a very interested and large pool of people who are interested in becoming a member of the choir. And we only wish we could accommodate all of them.
Do you have a particular number or set or piece of music in this program, or the two programs you've prepared, that you
I
feel
think because
partial
of
to?
my background, of course, I love the music of the master composers. And so that's always a portion of the program that I look forward to programming and also to performing.
How do the two of you share the load to get the choir ready in terms of the rehearsal schedule and everything else? How do you work that out so that, you know, are you both at every rehearsal and you do 2 and 3 a week sometimes? And
This particular tour, we are only having one extra rehearsal a week for just about 6 weeks before we leave, because we felt like that the choir was well enough prepared with what we had programmed, that we could get it put together in that amount of time. I should also say that this comes right on the heels of a very important performance we did the end of February for the American Choral Directors Association National Conference that was held here in Salt Lake City. We did 3 major concerts during that 5-day conference. And so we're using much of the music that we prepared for that. And so that's been a great help in preparing. Plus, we also felt we had to work so hard for that, and the choir worked really hard for that, and did did 3 really wonderful performances. We just felt like we can't just start reinventing the wheel again. And so it's been actually wonderful to program some of this literature again and start revisiting it again after about 2 or 3 months of not doing it. And I think everybody's enjoying that process.
that's wonderful. Talk about the orchestra for a minute. You're taking 65 or so members?
66 members of the orchestra, and you know, the orchestra just makes the tour be magnificent. What they bring to what the choir is able to do, not only here in Salt Lake City, but especially as we go on tour and visit these important concert venues. It makes it so that we can just be completely flexible and present a program that has a lot of diversity, a lot of color. The palettes of color that we're able to do with the orchestra are quite amazing.
Well, and we haven't talked about this, but we've got 360 or so members of the choir going. We've got 66 members of the orchestra. You've got the you get up to the numbers, and it totals up to about 11 buses of people.
That's right.
And that's a lot of people, and several trucks loaded with luggage, and 3 airplanes, and this is a major undertaking. Ryan, when you first started touring with the choir, and that was in 2009, Mack's an old hand, he's been at it since 2001. What were your expectations, and what surprised you in the experience of touring with the choir?
I had no idea what to expect. In fact, I arrived in the summer of 2009, and I went on tour 3 or 4 days later. And so I actually did not conduct on that first tour. I was able to just sit back and observe the whole thing unfolding. And as you mentioned, it is a monumental task to go on tour with this many people. And it's a real tribute to especially our army of volunteers and staff and people that help get us ready and make everything happen. But it is quite an experience for the choir to go on tour, and I was grateful to observe that first time. I've conducted the last 2 times on tour, and that's been really an amazing experience as well. But it is fun to be able to sit back and watch it all happen.
I should say that going on tour with the choir is like a well-oiled machine. Everything is very carefully planned, really to almost the second. And even though there are a lot of people that go on, it's a lot of people to transport, to house, and to feed, let alone all the other things that go on. We have a magnificent staff who really take care of and think of everything.
They kind of have it down to a science at this point.
They do,
really
and I've heard some conductors, and I know some conductors of various ensembles, not only do they have to worry about the music and the musical presentation, but they have to worry about all the accommodations, all the transportation, everything else, and we are in a wonderful position. Many would be envious of our situation because really, basically, all we have to worry about is the music, which is the way it really should be.
That's right.
But it's a luxury.
It is a luxury.
It is a luxury. It is, like you said, a well-oiled machine. Your luggage is tagged according to color, and I've never quite seen anything like it, but it just clicks through.
Well, it's really quite amazing.
Yeah.
And to see it in action, it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to actually see it in action that makes you really appreciate it.
We were talking about choir members and their volunteer status. How do they arrange to go on tour for 10 days in the summer like this? Many of them have jobs, professions.
I think for many it is their vacation time that they take, and probably at the expense of other vacations they could be taking during that period of time. But I think that most would agree that it's certainly worth it. Many people may think that touring with the choir is quite glamorous, and there's the most glamorous part of it is the performing. The rest of it is really it's really quite difficult. It's stressful, and particularly for choir members, there's very little downtime, if you will.
It's demanding physically.
It's very demanding physically, and people might think, well, there's a lot of sightseeing time and a lot of free time. There's very little sightseeing and very little free time, and so sometimes we'll go to a city and see very little of what the city is famous for because we're simply engaged in and concentrating on the performance in that particular city.
I remember in Boston back in 2003 with all these buses going through the streets of Boston on the way to the July 4th performance, and there were people on the side of on the sidewalk waving. It was the rock star opportunity for the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, and that's about what they saw of Boston.
That's right. Yes.
There really wasn't a whole lot to it. Now, Ryan, you lived in Boston for a while. You were there getting your advanced degrees in music before you came to the choir. Tell us a little bit about going home to Boston. What's this going to mean for you?
Well, you're absolutely right. Boston was home to me. I was there for 7 years, and I grew up in Connecticut, not far from Boston, and so I loved living back there, and still have lots of friends and teachers and special people back there that I'm excited to see at the concert. And it's a very special city. I mean, it really is one of the great cultural cities in this country for music and the arts. And so it's a real special thing for the choir to perform there. It's a real special thing for me to be able to go back, and has a lot of personal meaning for me just because of my family ties there and my kids going to school there and us being a part of that community. I'm really excited to go back.
Well, and I bet you'll see some of your friends and associates there in the
They've already told me they've
audience.
got their tickets, so yeah, I'm excited.
Well, and interesting you would mention tickets. You know, we've seen a wonderful surge of ticket purchases as it gets closer and closer to the date. There are always still a few tickets available, so we encourage anyone who has a desire to hear the choir. And there's something about hearing the choir in person. Talk about that, Matt, compared with watching it on television or hearing it
Right. Well,
on the website.
this is certainly one of the most important reasons why we tour, in that it's absolutely the case that it's one thing to hear the choir on television or the radio or over a computer screen or a CD, and it's another thing to hear the choir live. And this just gives people that opportunity. It's rare to hear a choir of 300, and in this case, we're taking 320 voices with us on tour because that's all we can fit on the stage. We could take more if we could fit them all, but in this case, 320. It's quite an experience to hear that many voices unified, we hope, unified as one. And an experience you just can't get any other way, except being there, listening to it live.
I think people all across the country could attest to that because you've toured in so many places around the
have.
nation,
We have.
from Canada to the Pacific, and
Yes.
you've been everywhere.
We have, and we've sung in some really wonderful places throughout the. In my time with the choir, it's going on 16 years. We've really covered almost every part of the country on these tours that we do every other year.
Carnegie Hall has to be, you mentioned it as being one of the premier locations, not just for this tour, but for music in general.
Yes.
You have some association with Carnegie Hall. Talk to us about Carnegie Hall for Mack Wilberg.
Well, my experience with Carnegie Hall as it relates to this particular tour is that I mentioned that we performed at the American Choral Directors Association National Convention a couple of months ago, and not because the piece was by me, but because it worked into our program. We did the first movement of my Requiem, and we are performing that again on this tour. And the interesting tie-in to Carnegie Hall is that piece was actually, that particular movement of the Requiem was commissioned by Carnegie Hall and was premiered in Carnegie Hall in about 2006 or 2007. And of course, I wasn't going to miss that, so I went and just had a magnificent experience sitting there, experiencing in this hall that has the most incredible history, particularly as it relates to our own American musical heritage. And so to be able to now return there and do this piece again, I mean, I never really thought I'd have that opportunity.
And he won't say this, but I can say that it's a stunning piece of music that he wrote, and it's going to fit beautifully into our concert and into the flow of things. So it's a treat for the choir and the orchestra to do this piece. So.
It's one of our most popular recordings, and people just love this music. So, of course, It should be on the program.
But going to Carnegie Hall is a dream for all of us. I don't remember when the choir sang in Carnegie Hall last time, but it's been several decades. So we're so grateful to be able to go there again. And interestingly enough, and this is our challenge with indoor venues, is that we are so large that it's difficult to accommodate both the choir and the orchestra, but both at Carnegie Hall and at Strathmore Hall, they have agreed to extend the stage a little bit, so that we can accommodate all of our singers and our orchestra. So that'll be again a wonderful experience.
Well, and they don't get the Mormon Tabernacle Choir very often either, so they're grateful to have us
they
there.
certainly don't usually accommodate a 320 voice chorus, that's for sure.
Well, you've been on so many tours, Mack. You've done a lot of the major tours with the choir since you came. I think 16 is what I counted up.
Yes, that's correct.
And they've been all over the country. The choir's getting ready to do this Atlantic Coast tour, and hopefully there will be other tours coming after it. Do you see opportunities in the future for the choir to again tour in venues that they haven't been in for a while?
I'm afraid you're trying to get information out of me
I can't
that I'm not at liberty to give. But let me just say that yes, we're
always planning for
the
next
on a tour
event.
because it really takes several years in advance in order to make these happen, because not only do you have to secure the concert venues, but you also have to make sure that hotels are available, that airplanes, buses, trains, if we need trains, that those are all available, and that takes usually several years of advanced planning in order to make it happen.
Nice try, Heidi, though. That was very good. That was very good.
Well, we don't want people to think that they're going to miss out because they're not in Carnegie Hall or at Strathmore or at Yankee Stadium to hear the choir sing. The choir is taking with it a host of social media opportunities for people to connect with the choir and be engaged, even though we might not be in their hometown. We've got the website, MormonTabernacleChoir.org, where people can go every day and see what the choir's doing that day and where they're singing and what they're singing and connect with us that way. We've got Twitter, and we've got Pinterest, and we've got Facebook, and we've got all of those things going on. Ryan?
Do we have Instagram?
We have Instagram.
Okay, that's what my daughters all do. It's all Instagram now, so.
And isn't it interesting that because we have this broad spectrum of social media, we now have a very broad spectrum of listeners. That we've got your daughter who's doing Instagram, and we've got some of us who are still kind of tied to the website, and we've got everything in between. Talk just a minute about how we connect with our audiences, even though they may not be on tour with us.
Well, that's just one of the great things about all this modern technology is we didn't have that luxury in the past of reaching out to so many people. And so there are so many ways to connect now and to interface with the choir. And I think the tour is no exception. From what I'm understanding about it, there are going to be lots of ways to reach out and to connect with what's going on. And I think you know a little bit more about it than I do. So,
well, I know that we're doing a lot to keep people with us, because what that will do is help them feel a part of the tour side of the choir, which is not an extra. It sounds to me like that's very much a part of the mainstream of what the choir does. Is that a fair statement, Mack?
I believe so, yes.
Well, we've been delighted to have you two with us. Do you have anything else you want to add? Any musical number that you want to plug so that people will listen for it in particular?
I think we'll just let it be a surprise. Just let it wash over the audience. It's gonna be wonderful.
It is going to be wonderful. And if you are in that area, or if you have family in that area in the Atlantic Coast, we recommend you get them in touch with the different venues so that they can attend one of the many fantastic concerts that
That's right.
is coming up.
We'd love to see as many as possible.
We would too. Well, thank you for being with us today, both of you. We will let you go.
Thanks so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you
And
very
thank
much.
you for coming.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
This has been Mormon Tabernacle Choir Premieres on the Mormon Channel, brought to you by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Thank you so much for being with us. This is Heidi Swinton saying goodbye, and we'll be with you again.
As I went down to the river to pray, studying about